Good morning guys, it's Louis from the Outdoor Manual YouTube channel and we're in the lovely North Wales valleys, the Ogwen Valley today, near the Tryfan mountain, and today we're going to be talking about hiking shoes versus hiking boots. Up until about 15 years ago, everything was hiking boots. Whenever you've seen someone going outside, they were the norm. Hiking boots, a high top and lots of rigidity in the boot. But in the last 15 years, the emergence of stuff like this, trail running / hiking shoes with a low top, which are obviously a lot different to these B2 Scarpa boots which I've got on at the minute. So come with me and we're going to be going through the differences, which use cases are best for each shoe, when you'd use them, the price, and obviously the drawbacks of each one. As you can see, look where we are. It's absolutely lovely up here today, guys. There's snow on the tops. The weather is absolutely perfect. There's not a cloud in the sky at all. So come with me while I talk and ramble about shoes. Now, as I was saying, in the last 15 years or so, there's been a clear divide in hiking shops, in hiking websites selling specific mountain boots or hiking boots as well. And as technology has advanced and changed over the years, it's not that simple to say a hiking boot is for X, Y and Z and a hiking shoe is for ABC. Each one has their attributes, each one's going to be better at different things. So ultimately there's nuance in what you're going to be using it for. Now, a hiking boot is going to be about 600 grams upwards to a kilo, depending on the type of boot. Maybe it's a B2 and a B3, they're more robust boots for summiting heavy old mountains. That's going to take a tax on your feet compared to maybe a set of hiking shoes like the Solomon's that I've just used as an example. Over 30,000 steps at a go on a hike, that's going to take a massive tax, even though it's only 500 grams more. See, when weight's on the bottom of your foot swinging around as you walk, it's going to feel heavier than if that weight was in your pack. So they do say it's going to weigh about 4 times as much as if you had the same weight in your bag on the end of your feet. So that's a massive tax, especially if you're going up somewhere which is up, down, lots of vertical ascent. It is going to take a toll. You need to factor that in when you're making your choice between a hiking shoe and a hiking boot. And of course, a heavier boot means higher fatigue because you put in more energy output into each step, which is going to cause you fatigue over a long time, in comparison to that of a hiking shoe, which is going to be a couple 100 grams less than your boot. Over a full days of climbing, hiking, it's going to have a massive tax on your overall energy levels by the end of the walk. Of course, if you're only doing a day, it's probably not too bad, but if you're doing multi-day hikes, maybe a bit of wild camping, it's obviously going to have a massive effect on you over the couple of days or 1 or 2 days that you're out in the wilderness. It's all about being smart and knowing the routes that you're going to take, what the terrain's going to be like, how much uphill you're going to be doing, how much downhill you're going to be doing, because people don't realise that going downhill is just as taxing as going uphill, if not more. Like for me, I much prefer an uphill sustained hike than one that takes into account a lot of downhill, because it's just harder on your knees. Obviously with the more support in a boot, you're not going to feel it as much as you would a hiking shoe. It's more secure, there's more material around your ankles to support it. But overall, if you're doing multi-day hikes such as the Altavia one in the Dolomites, when we did that last summer, I was in hiking shoes just because the effort that it would take in boots just wasn't worth it. I guess that kind of brings me to my next point. The UK terrain, if you look around today, it's rock, it's full of scree here in Snowdonia, and it's like that in every mountain range in the UK. Lots of scree, either from the mines or from the old glaciers that carved these valleys out. And because it's not very firm underfoot, you need to be aware that a hiking boot It's going to provide more support in those areas. You know, if your foot goes and you're in a boot, at least your ankle's much more safer than a hiking shoe that has your ankle out bare. I guess sprains and other ankle injuries are going to be more common in a hiking shoe, but there is a catch. Yes, hiking boot is going to provide more support around your ankles, but if you go down and land awkwardly in your ankle regardless, it's still going to knock your ankle out. Or if you land horrendously, it's just going to move the point of break upwards into your leg rather than your ankle. And there's been loads of reports and studies done that actually kind of counteract the general evidence or the general feeling that hiking boot equals more support and less injuries long term, because it just moves the point of weakness. Obviously, as you can see down here, these boots are making an absolute meal of this path, but if it was to be slightly more treacherous or maybe uphill, especially as there's ice still around here, did I really want to be in a hiking shoe? Probably not, even though my Solomon hiking shoes that I've got, I'm using an example for this video, are actually pretty grippy. They are actually pretty good, but of course if you're using trail runners, you're just asking for problems, I think, in terrain like this, and this makes up the vast majority of the UK mountains. You know, it's slippy, it's wet, some parts of it are marshy, and your whole foot needs to be secure, really. So if something does go wrong, all the risk factors are mitigated. Now, if you're in somewhere like the Peak District, maybe Dartmoor, where it is just a bit more boggy and it's more peatland rather than rock underlay, it kind of just exacerbates the same issues, that either your foot is going to get lodged or the waterproofness of the shoe isn't going to hold up. And brings me on to my next point: waterproof versus breathability. Now, there's some membranes and some fabrics that claim to have excellent waterproof and breathability, but in reality you're never going to get something that excels in both of those, absolutely, because for it to be a breathable membrane, it needs to have some kind of like porous factor to it. Now, my own boots, these Scarpas, they are waterproof, and the tongue and basically the body of the shoe is one, so it creates kind of a complete arc around your foot. And to be fair, my Solomons are also the same, but obviously given the height difference and the fact that these ride all the way up my leg past my ankle, realistically I'm going to be much more waterproof in these shoes. Say if I was to accidentally step in a peat bog, or potentially experience like downpour rains. Like last weekend I was in the Lake District and it absolutely downpoured. I was wearing these Scarpas and my waterproof pants actually failed, and to be fair, these boots were full of water by the end of it. They were full of water, and it's not to say that, oh, these boots are waterproof. It's because when water gets in the top of your boot, it's going to take a really long time to dry, and regardless if you've not got a complete seal on the top of your foot, then there's obviously going to be water ingress. And I guess moving back to the hiking shoe debate, those shoes, the top lip or the top of your shoe is much lower, so the depth of a puddle or the depth of a peat bog you might step in is going to be much less, and you're going to get, or the depth of the peat bog that you can step in and stay dry is going to be much lower or much less than that of a hiking boot. But on the flip side of that, because the shoes have less material in them, they're more lightweight, they're going to dry much quicker than that of these boots. A major point to add is that boots, largely, you can stick a pair of crampons on them. Obviously you've got the difference between B1, B2, B3 boots. You're all going to fit different types of crampons, but you can always get some wraparound micro spikes on a pair of boots. shoes, it's 50-50. Sometimes they're going to fit, sometimes they're not. You might be able to get a universal crampon that fits on a pair of shoes. It's going to be much more difficult and much more unstable underfoot than if you're wearing boots with crampons. Okay, so let's talk about the load carrying availability of each shoe. So obviously both shoes are going to be okay, realistically carrying nothing, carrying yourself up the hills. When you start to put packs on that weigh 20-25 kilos, if you're doing a big multi-day pack, you're going to want some underfoot which is a bit more stable than a hiking shoe. Although there is a catch. Back to the weight argument, it's going to be harder to jog your feet up a hill or multiple hills over a couple of days in a bigger hiking boot. But then to go against that point, so to speak, every single time you take a step it's going to take more effort, and over a couple of days hike it's going to absolutely burn you out. When you've got a lighter pack, maybe 10, 12, 15 kilos, the hiking shoe is probably going to be your best bet. Which if you're doing fast packing or a couple of days, maybe a day or two of wild camping, it's probably going to be better on your overall energy output using a hiking shoe. However, if you're lugging 20, 30, maybe even 40 kilos with you, you probably want that extra rigidity in the bottom of your foot so your weight is spread out more. Now the foam used in most trail running and trail shoes, so to speak, is going to be much softer and much less firm than that of a hiking shoe, specifically like these B2 boots. So again, you need to work out where you're going, how long you're going for, before you make a decision on which shoes to use. Now for the price obviously a big standpoint in terms of buying gear and buying outdoor gear. For a pair of trail runners, you're going to be looking at about £150, 100 to 150 quid for a decent pair. And then for a pair of boots, you know, you're looking at 150 upwards of £300, maybe even more if we're talking about high altitude boots, but that's for another video. These Scarpas down for 300. These are B2 boots, the semi alpine boots, but you can get away with walking them around the Welsh Mountains, obviously. But again, it kind of goes back to the point of you need to be buying for the terrain that you're going to be walking in. I guess another point to consider when buying boots is the amount of time that it takes to wear in each pair of shoes. So my Scarpas, they're about 6 months old maybe, and yeah, I'm still wearing them in. They're a much more firm material, obviously, to provide a bit more protection when you're walking on the ground like this. But with a pair of trail runners, realistically most of the time you won't really have to wear them in. They won't hurt, they'll be okay for the most part. Of course there'll be some pairs which kill your feet, but it's just another thing to consider when buying. I know sometimes what I do with older pairs, specifically leather boots, is you wear them in the bath. It might sound unconventional, but it works with rugby boots. You wear them in the bath, they mould to your feet better than if you were to just wear them out and about. It speeds up that process, because nothing worse than killing your feet halfway through a hike and not having a Compeed or a blister plaster. So yeah, it's just another thing to consider here. Look at these views though. Just see the tip of Snowdon in the back over there. Hopefully we'll be at the top of the hill, be able to see that Crew Gog in its life. I guess the durability of a hiking shoe versus a hiking boot, well, the boot's basically designed to be a bit more robust rather than the shoe, a bit more heavy duty. So with that, it's obviously going to last longer than a hiking shoe. And if I use this as an example, if you think about these boots, zero flex in these at all, zero, and compared to something like that that goes like that. Obviously the one that's a bit more rigid and secure is going to last longer. On the whole, obviously you're going to get some boots that are going to fall apart really quickly, and you're going to get some shoes that last many years. But I mean, you buy a decent set of boots and they're going to last you a good few years. I'm hoping to get a good 5-10 years out of these, and these I'll probably have to replace every couple of seasons. Realistically, these aren't going to get worn in winter, really, are they? These are going to be our winter boots you have been over the winter period. So overall, you're looking at these going to last much longer than a hiking shoe overall. Just look at that view. All the way to Snowdon, Cribgoch. You see all the way out to sea, and Anglesey in the back as well. You are kind of prone to blisters in shoes like these, again because you take a while to wear in, and also just because of the robustness and the rigidity in the boot. Like, obviously these are a bit of an exaggerated example because of the B2 boots, the B2 crampon slots, but even regular hiking boots on the whole, past boots I've had are much more prone to giving you blisters. In fact, I'm going to have to put a Compede on right now because I can feel one forming. Also, with a bit of a tip for blisters, if you can feel one forming, defo strap and put a plaster on straight away. Don't let it get worse because it's only going to cause you more problems. If you get a big blister and God forbid it fills up with fluid, you know it's going to cause you even more problems and you're not going to be able to put a plaster on it. So treat it early and you should be ready for the rest of your hike. I guess another point to make is across this icy scree field is people have a misconception that Gore-Tex is the only waterproof and semi-breathable material in the world. Just not the case. You got a lot of brands, such as I've got a Mammoth coat that have their own waterproof breathable membrane. So sometimes you can just be roped into buying products that have Gore-Tex written on them, but most of the time you can get away with wearing other brands have their own breathability membrane. You know, if once Gore-Tex gets wet, especially on the inside of a coat or a shoe, it takes an age to dry. It takes an age to dry, so just bear that in mind. Now, in the UK you kind of want something in the middle, don't you? You don't want something that's going to take 50 years to dry, but you also don't want something that as soon as you step in a puddle is going to give you trench foot for the whole hike or multi-day hike. So, you know, you need to be in the middle. And Gore-Tex does do that, it's Gore-Tex Pro, but you've got to be wary about getting into a buying trap and buying into something that just says Gore-Tex on it, rather than actually buying a product for its attributes. So just bear that in mind when you're buying your next pair of shoes. If you're doing winter mountaineering, winter ascents of some of the big mountains in the UK, especially the likes of Striding Edge at Helvellyn, Sharp Edge, Cribgoch, you know, all the countless ones in Scotland and Tellac and that, you're going to need crampons, axe, ropes, the lot, and a pair of shoes. It just ain't going to cut it really, is it? However, there is another final point when it comes to winter people maybe overlook is the actual warmth of the boot. Now your hands and toes, fingers, they're basically going to get cold much quicker than the rest of your body because realistically less meat on them. Look at them, less meat on your fingers than the main body. They're on the edge of your body, so they take more to get circulated. I don't know biology, but you know what I'm trying to say, they're on the edge of your body, so they're going to be more cold. Obviously people think of the hands, the gloves, etc, but people massively overlook how cold your feet can get in winter, especially in conditions like this. So more robust boot has more padding, more warmth, basically bit more of a warm factor. Are obviously going to be better in winter conditions, but like I said previously, on the flip side, if you're wearing too much on your feet, too many layers, you're just going to sweat and that goes to your feet as well, and no one wants overly sweaty, squelchy feet. But I mean, in the UK that is going to happen more often than not, given the weather and how quickly the weather can change. Like this morning, check the weather, there was meant to be no clouds, as you can see over there near Trifan and the South Ridge. it's all in cloud, so it's one of them ones that changes all the time, so you just need to be aware. Now when you're thinking of the last Sportivas, you know, the other makes of Scarpa, a lot of the time the rigidity of the boot is paramount, because you need to put like C3 crampons, so they can't really allow to flex, but I guess equally as important as that, the insulation of the boot. So you get a lot of these boots that actually have like an inner sock. Obviously it's kind of outside the remit of this video, but it's just a thing to be aware of when choosing boots and shoes, is how cold are your feet going to get? Are you a cold person like me? I'm a bit of a sweaty individual, I get really hot really quick, so it's never been too much of a bad thing for me. But I've got mates that shiver down to the bone in bloody 30-degree sunlight, so you know, it's like a personal preference always. Oh, and I just stepped over the lake. So we're back at the car now, and I guess the final takeaway of this video is it's not really boots versus shoes. Now they all have their own attributes. Obviously a boot is going to give you more stability, but it weighs more. A shoe's going to be more versatile, but it's probably going to get your feet wet in poor weather. Ultimately it's going to come down to the terrain, the conditions and the activity that you're doing. And as I've explained in the video, there's going to be times where a boot is going to be the obvious choice, and there's going to be times where the hiking shoe or the trail running shoe is going to be the obvious choice. But of course there's crossovers, maybe coming out of spring, going into autumn, it might be a bit boggy, it might not be too boggy, but you've just got to kind of play the conditions and play the cards you dealt with, because if you get halfway up a mountain and you've made the wrong decision, you know, you'll know about it. And I guess overall, when you think about it, some are hiking, some are wild camping, some are backpacking. A lot of the time you're not really going to be carrying those massive packs that you need the stability for. I'd probably say that a shoe is more suited for me personally, rather than a hiking boot in those conditions. But obviously up there today, the boots were put through the paces, and to be fair, they put my feet through the paces. Feet are sore, and yeah, they're glad to be in a normal pair of shoes. I guess the final thing, if you found this video helpful at all, give us a follow, give us a like, maybe comment what your thoughts are, whether you prefer hiking shoes or hiking boots. You know, it's a nuance, it's up to the individual, isn't it? So if you think I've missed anything as well, be sure to put that in the comments, because I'm more than happy to take the critique on board. I've got a couple of good video ideas in the lineup. Hopefully in summer I should be getting some decent footage of the Altavia 1. That'll be a 10-day trek in the Dolomites, so yeah, keep posted for that. And yeah, if you enjoyed the video, give us a like.